More testimony is expected today in the trial of the man charged in the death of a Toronto police officer yesterday. Umar Zameer finished up his time on the stand with emotional testimony in his own defense. He has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder in Constable Jeffrey Northrup's death. Zameer addressed Northrup's family, saying he never meant to hurt him and wished he could bring him back. Zameer testified he didn't know Northrup was a police officer because he was dressed in plain clothes. He says he was scared when Northrup approached him and tried to leave the garage where the collision happened. Prosecutors allege Zameer chose to make maneuvers that caused Northrup's death, but the defense says this was a tragic accident. And criminal defense lawyer Sonia Schickman joins us now with the latest analysis on this trial. Sonia, thanks so much for joining us. So emotional testimony, tears from Umar Zameer as he took the stand this week. When taking the stand, he said he feared his family was under attack when two strangers began yelling and pounding on his car windows. What did you make of his statement?
I think the statement goes to the very core issue about how the police officers don't just arrest people, but how police officers investigate crimes at times. His statement conveys the fact that when he was approached by the police officers, it was done in an aggressive manner, and it was done in a manner that led him to believe that he was actually being attacked or potentially robbed. And that raises the issues of police behavior at the time when they not only arrest people but also investigate crimes.
I want to talk about the other side here now. The Crown's position is that Zameer knew that the officers belonged to law enforcement and that he intentionally ran Northrup down. During cross-questioning yesterday, the prosecution said that Constable Northrup was a big guy, that there was no way Zameer didn't know what was happening and that he must have heard thudding and thumping. How difficult is that for the Crown to prove?
I think this is what's called circumstantial evidence. The Crown's trying to get the jury to infer that there's nothing else he could have believed other than the fact that he was a police officer. And I think the devil lies in the details here. And that's exactly the issue in this particular case. You've got the testimony of various police officers, and their testimony seems to very much align on those details, which would further the Crown's theory that, in fact, it was obvious that he was a police officer. However, the defense is using some other evidence that would question that theory and point out details that would lead to a different conclusion. The grainy video, the difficult video, is inconsistent with the evidence of the police officers. I understand the defense reconstruction has come up with a conclusion about how the accident occurred that is also inconsistent with the evidence of the officers that were all testifying to the same thing. So it's a difficult hurdle. It seems like an obvious statement. He's obviously a police officer. How could you not know? But this is exactly what trials are for. They are to look at the small details of every issue and then question the conclusions that at the beginning seem obvious, but by the end are less than that.
So, as you noted, so many inconsistencies, contradictions here. You have the police officers alleging one thing, the family alleging another, and the video telling a different story. What does the jury do with all of this? How does it sift through all the evidence? And how do you expect the jury then to instruct the judge to instruct the jury?
So I'll tell you, I think this is, it's not an unusual situation. A lot of trials start with, as I said, one picture, and then the details sort of come into play. The judge will review, Justice Malloy will have to review all the details and will actually have to emphasize in her summary of the facts the different versions of events. She'll have to call upon the jury to look not just at the big picture, but to assess all the inconsistencies, to consider one testimony against another, to weigh the details, to look at the scene and to come to their conclusion. I think studies have shown that when it comes to things like that, juries are actually quite conscientious because it's almost like a mathematical problem. They sit down and they look at one version of events, another version of events, and they look at various inconsistencies and they measure them against it. And of course, the judge will tell them at the end of the day they are not to compare stories, but rather they are to come to their conclusion beyond a reasonable doubt whether or not the Crown has proved every element of the offense. And so by definition, the doubt falls with the defense. So if the jury finds sufficient amount of inconsistencies that raises a doubt, they will have to return a verdict of not guilty.
Sonia, the criminal code makes it clear anytime somebody is accused of killing a police officer, they are charged with first-degree murder. Umar Zameer has pleaded not guilty. Walk us through what the verdict could look like and what all the possible scenarios look like here.
So the finding of a manslaughter could also be a possibility. I think technically, and that would be up to the defense whether or not they want to argue it, I think technically it could be a finding of a second-degree murder. It's theoretically possible that the jury is instructed they can find that he did not know it was a police officer, but he did know that it was a person standing in front of him, and he ran that person head on. I think that theory is less available to the jury, but it is available, and I think the Crown would ask for it to be left to the jury as an alternative. The Crown may not. It'll be a strategic reason, but the judge will decide whether or not it's a lower, lesser included offense, and if so, she'll leave all possibilities to the jury.
Okay, we will leave it there. Criminal defense lawyer Sonia Schickman, thanks so much for your perspective and expertise on this. We so appreciate your time.
Thank you. Have a good day.